The Night Witches. Today we'll look into a female-only regiment which brought fear towards the German soldiers in the Second World War. During 1939, World War II started with the Soviets and Germans dividing up Poland due to a treaty which was known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This treaty allowed Soviet Russia to carve out Eastern Europe. However, on June 22, 1941, Nazi Germany had begun one of the largest invasions on Earth, Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of Russia. The regiment was officially known as the 588th Night Bomber Regiment and changed its name in 1943 to the 46th Tammern Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiment. Women generally didn't participate in the Air Force or in the military in general. This would change as Marina Raskova used her personal ties with Joseph Stalin to order the creation of 3 women's Air Force units on October of 1941, one of which would become the Night Witches Regiment, which was led by Major Yevdokia Vershanskaya. The regiment used a tactic which would idle the engine when about to bomb. This created a noise which the Germans would associate with witches' broom, thus giving them their name. The regiment would become part of the 4th Air Army in the Southern Front, and would conduct harassment and bombing campaigns against the Germans from 1942 to 1945. The name change in 1943 was due to their participation in the conflict in the Taman Peninsula, and they were also given the Guards designation. The regiment flew the old and slow Polikarpov Po-2 planes, which held its advantages such as being able to turn easily. At its peak, it held 42-person crews. The other air regiments originally disliked the Night Witches. However, the attitude changed after their participation in the Taman Peninsula, and especially after World War II. Now there are several documentaries showing what they did and praising their work. Anyways, let's look into the timeline of what they did during the clashes in the Eastern Front. The Night Witches planes held no radios, and the Air Forces held no parachutes until 1944, so the attacks were just hit and run, or him flying in this case. The regiment was deployed on May 23, 1942, and arrived to the Southern Front on the 27th. On the 12th of June, a baptism by fire took place on the bombed Don Mius River crossings by the Stavropol outskirts. From October to December of 1942, the Night Witches began clashes with the Germans. The regiment protected the city of Vladikavkaz in North Ossetia from the German units and began several offensive campaigns against the German forces near or in North Ossetia. In the beginning of 1943, the Air Forces broke through the Terek River, and throughout the winter, spring, and autumn months, the liberation of the Caucasus was supplied by the Night Witches. An aerial campaign was going on over the land of Kuban. During this time, the conflict in the Taman Peninsula and the liberation of the port known as Novorossiysk, New Russia, began. After their successes, they were praised for their actions. However, the journey was not yet finished. The Kerch-Eltigan operation began, with the Night Witches supporting the Soviet naval invasion of Crimea, and they also participated in the liberation of Sevastopol. Throughout the summer of 1944, the regiment assaulted German units in Belarusian cities such as Minsk and Bialystok. The offensives continued with the Soviet air units helping to liberate much of eastern Poland. During the beginning of 1945, the Germans knew that they were going to lose. The question was when they would fall. The truth was that a war would last another brutal 5 months. The Night Witches participated in the attack of eastern Prussia. However, the Germans managed to hold out in the area. The status quo would stay until the end of the war. In the meantime, the regiment helped in liberating Gdynia and Gdansk, and during spring, the last attacks of the Night Witches would occur, that being the Oder Offensive. The Soviet airplanes and the Night Witches supported the Soviets crossing the Vistula and then the Oder rivers, which eventually led to the Road of Berlin. By the beginning of May, the war in Europe was over, and the Night Witches succeeded in liberating Eastern Europe from Nazi forces. During the October of 1945, the Night Witch Regiment was disbanded after its contributions to the Great Patriotic War. The Night Witches were the only one of the 3 air regiments to stay women only. The other 2 regiments, which were called to arms on October 1941, were the 586th Fighter Aviation Regiment and the 587th Bomber Aviation Regiment. Over 23,000 attacks were made, 28,000 flight hours were flown, 3,000 tons of bombs were dropped, and 26,000 shells were used by a regiment with only 261 people. 17 bridges, 2 railway stations, 9 railways, 26 warehouses, and far more infrastructure were destroyed by the Night Witches. To add to this, 155 drops of goods, which included food and ammunition, were given to the Soviet units during the Great Patriotic War. 32 of the Night Witches died during the war due to plane crashes, combat deaths, and tuberculosis. Anyways, let's look into some examples of what some Night Witch individuals did during their service. We'll cover Kiyaz Dospanova, Irina Sabrova, and Yevdokia Bershanskaya. His Dospanova was born in Ataran, Kazakhstan in 1922. From her early childhood, she had wanted to be a pilot. Dospanova moved to Moscow and she had been accepted as a reserve pilot after secondary school. She then requested to join the Air Force but was denied in 1939. This was due to her being a woman, so she instead joined the Medical Institute in 1941. After hearing about Roscova's plan to have women-based air regiments, Dospanova's passion could be brought to light and she applied to Saratov Aviation College. She joined the Night Witches Regiment in 1942. Dospanova helped in the Battle of the Caucasus and the Taman Peninsula. On April 1st, she had returned from a mission that had collided into another Night Witch plane. The other plane's pilots died immediately, while Dospanova's partner died during surgery. Dospanova was presumed dead after not moving for hours. However, she had not went through the symptoms of death, and it was revealed that she was still alive. After days of surgery, Dospanova was alive, but her legs were permanently weakened and she needed help to use them. After 6 months of a cast and later a cane to help her walk, she had rejoined the regiment and would become the head of communications for the regiment. She had committed hundreds of more attacks in Belarus, Poland, and even Germany. By the end of the war, she had committed 300 attacks, and after the war, she had worked up the political positions of the Kazakhstan SSR. During the 80s, she had retired in 2004. Dospanova was given the Hero of Kazakhstan award. 4 years later, in 2008, she would die. The next person we'll talk about is arguably one of the most famous ones, Irina Sabrova. Sabrova was born into a relatively poor family in Novomoskovsk, 1914. She moved to Moscow in 1927 and graduated from trade school in 1933. Throughout the 30s, Sabrova worked as a sewing machine maintenance worker and then started working on manufacturing postal boxes. During 1939, Sabrova attended and graduated at Bauman Air Club. During 1940, she attended and graduated the Kherson School of Flight Instructors. Furthermore, she became an instructor for an aero club. During October of 1941, Sabrova answered the call of arms to join one of the 3 women air units. After some training, she had joined the Night Witches Regiment in 1942. However, before the regiment even reached the front lines, Sabrova nearly never got to see combat. Poor weather conditions led to Sabrova crashing a plane, but she luckily survived. Sabrova had become renowned for her resilience and had taken the initiative in the Battle of Mozdok, where she initiated around 250 attacks. During 1943, after the Night Witches received lots of respect, and with it, so did Sabrova. She had been known especially because of the naval invasion of Crimea. The efforts of the Night Witches allowed the Soviet naval units to receive the necessary resources, with Sabrova giving around 50 drops of necessities. She had committed 7 to 8 sorties a day. By October 1944, Sabrova had enacted around 825 attacks and dropped nearly 100 tons of bombs. She had destroyed several artillery and even bombed a locomotive. During the winter of 1944, Sabrova had a 10-day break and had discovered that German soldiers had killed her mother by taking her boots in the snow. This hadn't stopped her progress though, and she continued to contribute in the Oder offensive. During the winter of 1945, Sabrova once again managed to cheat death. She had flown deep into German territory and the engine had shot. But she managed to glide a plane safely back into Soviet territory. After Germany fell, Sabrova flew a plane above Warsaw to Berlin as a celebration. By the end of the war, she had committed the most sorties out of any of the Night Witches, over 1,000. Before Germany fell, she achieved the Hero of the Soviet Union award, and after the war, she became an aircraft technician in Poland. She got married with Alexander Komenko and had a child in 1947, before leaving the military in 1948. She moved to Moscow in the 60s and died in 2000. Anyways, let's move on to the last person who was the leader of the Night Witches, Yevdokia Bershanskaya. Bershanskaya was born in Dobrovolnya in 1913. She was raised by her uncle and her childhood is mostly unknown. After graduating secondary school, Bershanskaya enrolled in a pilot school and graduated in 1932. From 1932 to 1939, she trained other pilots. On 1939, Bereshanskaya joined the military in an air squadron for the city of Krasnodar. On 1940, she married and had a child with Peter Bereshansky, but they divorced quickly. Due to Bereshanskaya's expertise, she became the leader of the Night Witches on October 1941, due to the command of Marina Roskova. She didn't actively take part in the fighting, instead took a leading role. She was given an Order of the Red Banner Award in 1943, and the Night Witches were disbanded on October 1945. This was due to the German threat and recently the Japanese threat being defeated. After the war, Bereshanskaya married and had 3 children with Konstantin Bocharov. Many of the Night Witches came for the wedding. On 1975, she was given the title Honorary Citizen of Krasnodar. Several years later, she moved to Moscow and died in 1982. Thus, the Night Witches are widely remembered and celebrated, with several references and stories showing their tale even during this day. Examples of them being portrayed in the modern world include the famous Sabaton music cover and the Night Swirls documentary series made by Star Media EN, both of which will be linked in the description. What else is on the description? Well, it's the credits for those who helped out for the video, so check them out. I hope you learned something new about the brave Soviet women who flew into the night to fight the Nazi hordes.